Hidden in Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks are machines that shouldn't exist in the 1400s helicopters. Robots, armored tanks, even a city built centuries ahead of its time. Most were never built, but all of them reveal a mind quietly thinking in the future while the world lived in the past. Welcome back, traveler. Find a quiet place, settle in, and let the noise of the day fade away. If you enjoy drifting through history at this slow, unhurried pace, consider subscribing so each week. Another soft, wandering story can find you again when you're ready to rest. Tonight, we open the worn, time-stained notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci. Inside these pages are sketches of machines the Renaissance could barely imagine: flying wings, mechanical knights, underwater suits, and cities planned with a precision that feels strangely modern. So breathe slowly, let your thoughts settle, and follow me into the quiet corners of Leonardo's workshop, where genius waited patiently for the world to catch up. Leonardo da Vinci's workshop in Florence never announced itself with noise or commotion, the way a blacksmith's forge or a carpenter's shed might. Instead, it breathed quietly, like a living thing resting before dawn. If you stepped inside at the right moment, say, just as the morning light began filtering through the slatted shutters, you would find the place suspended between sleep and waking. The air smelled faintly of linseed oil, warm beeswax, old parchment, and a thin, earthy dust that clung to stone walls older than Leonardo himself. There were no polished surfaces here. Every shelf bowed slightly under the weight of books. Every tabletop bore scratches and tiny nicks from experiments abandoned halfway. And every corner held coils of cord, stray feathers, odd bits of metal, and precise tools whose purpose only Leonardo fully understood. The room was messy in the way a storm cloud is messy, chaotic from a distance, but carrying a hidden structure held delicately together by invisible intention. Tools lay out, not because Leonardo forgot to put them away, but because some part of his mind was already thinking 5 steps ahead, picturing them in motion, imagining them assembling themselves into a mechanism only he could see. In this quiet space, ideas floated like dust, mostini, weightless, drifting comfortably in the warm stillness, until Leonardo grabbed one and pulled it down into the world of ink and paper. Here, in this dim Florence workshop, half laboratory, half sanctuary, Leonardo began imagining machines that didn't belong to the 15th century at all. Florence outside his window was a place of horse hooves, slow carts, shouting street vendors, clanging bells, and the occasional argument between neighbors. But inside this room, time bent differently. The Renaissance was blossoming in painting, sculpture, and geometry. But even within that flowering of brilliance, Leonardo's imagination stood strangely apart. He looked at a spinning wheel and saw not just a tool for twisting thread, but a mechanism of gears and proportional ratios. He watched a blacksmith hammer iron and wondered how much force the human arm could actually deliver, and whether a machine could deliver more. He watched birds circle the sky above the Arno River and felt the weight of a question that no one in Florence bothered to ask. What keeps them up there, and could a human ever join them? His workshop was the womb of these questions, a place where his restless mind could roam freely without the boundaries of practicality, money, or even the physics known to his lifetime. Leonardo didn't have modern textbooks to lean on, no aerodynamics manuals, no engineering handbooks, no physics calculations written out by earlier geniuses. Instead, he built his knowledge from scratch, one observation at a time, studying the world as if it were a handwritten manuscript waiting to be deciphered. The workshop reflected this fascination. Everywhere you looked, scraps of his curiosity lay in plain sight. On one table sat a collection of bird wings preserved just long enough for him to examine the angles of each feather. On another lay sketches of flowing water streams curling around rocks, eddies forming natural spirals. Leonardo could watch water for hours, convinced that its movement revealed secret laws that governed everything from air to blood. Loose gears made of wood and brass littered the floor, tiny prototypes of mechanisms he was designing, abandoned temporarily when his mind leaped elsewhere. Even the walls carried his thoughts literally. He scribbled notes on them in charcoal, reversed into mirror handwriting, as if the walls themselves should hold his half-formed ideas, until he had time to refine them. Despite the clutter, nothing felt accidental. Leonardo arranged chaos the way a painter arranges color, with intention. One shelf held anatomical studies, Gall's bones, drawings of muscles peeled back layer by layer, observations written in his left-handed mirrored script. Another held color pigments and delicate brushes, reminders of commissions he often found less interesting than his machines. A third shelf contained models of machines carved from wood, simple levers, pulleys, and crank systems, each one a small experiment in motion. If anyone else walked in, they would see only objects. But to Leonardo, each object whispered possibilities. A spring might store energy. A feather might reveal the secret to lift. A piece of cord might become part of a tension system for a future invention. His workshop wasn't filled with tools, it was filled with potential. In this quiet room, Leonardo's days followed no predictable rhythm. He worked when inspiration struck and wandered off when a problem refused to yield. He might spend an hour studying the tendons on the back of his own hand, sketching them meticulously, then suddenly leap to designing a gear-driven cart capable of moving without horses. Some afternoons he stared at candles, fascinated by the way flame shapes shifted with small changes in air. Even sleep came irregularly. Some nights he rested in brief bursts, 20 minutes here, a short nap there, always waking with a thought he needed to pin down before it vanished. His apprentices, loyal but perpetually confused, tried to maintain some order, organizing tools, cleaning brushes, sorting sketches, but Leonardo's mind moved faster than they could tidy. By the time they returned one section to neatness, another had already exploded with scribbled diagrams and scattered prototypes. They didn't question him. This was simply the reality of living in the orbit of a mind that refused to work in straight lines. It was in this workshop, surrounded by scraps of wood and whispers of ideas, that Leonardo first sketched the machines people now call ahead of their time. Here, in near silence, he charted the inner workings of wings meant for human flight, sketched a self-propelled cart that moved without horses, imagined armored vehicles shaped like turtles, drew plans for underwater breathing apparatuses, and even drafted designs for a city built with sanitation systems, centuries more advanced than anything around him. But in these early moments of creation, none of the inventions were grand pronouncements. They came quietly, creeping into the margins of his pages like daydreams. As he worked, he murmured thoughts under his breath, thinking aloud in soft fragments. If a wing curves so, then lift. If the gear turns here, then motion can continue here. He spoke to himself, because the problems were too large to keep inside his head. And besides, the workshop was the only place where he didn't feel out of step with the world. What people often forget about Leonardo is that he did not invent because he wanted fame or accolades. At the time, he was already known as a brilliant painter, the artist behind masterpieces like the Annunciation and the Adoration of the Magi. Wealthy patrons sought him for his artistic skill. But in his workshop, alone with gears and feathers, he wasn't thinking about commissions or prestige. He was thinking about questions. How does nature move? How does force travel? What makes a bird glide? How can a machine store energy? These questions tugged at him more strongly than any wealthy patron could. Even when he accepted commissions, he often drifted back toward his machines, sketches, and experiments. Painting paid the bills, but invention fed something much deeper, craving to understand the architecture of the universe. This workshop was his refuge from expectations. In Florence, artists were celebrated, but inventors were considered eccentric. People admired skill, but they seldom trusted imagination that wandered too far. Leonardo, curious, restless, always thinking in diagrams, didn't fit neatly into any category. Yet inside these four walls, with light slanting across his workbench and tools within reach, he fit perfectly. The room allowed him to be exactly who he was, a thinker who saw the world as a series of interconnected systems waiting to be unraveled and reshaped. Sometimes, late at night, the workshop glowed with soft lamplight while the rest of Florence lay asleep. Leonardo sat hunched over a sheet of paper, the quill scratching rhythmically as he drew. Outside, the distant hum of the city faded. Inside, the only sound was the slow turning of gears he tested with his hands, or the soft flutter of pages as he flipped through his old notes. In moments like this, he wasn't working toward an invention. He was simply exploring, letting curiosity lead him to ideas he didn't yet fully understand. He might draw a gear system on one page, a bird wing on the next, and a human heart on the third, never thinking this mix strange. To him, everything echoed everything else. Nature and mechanics, flight and anatomy, fluid movement and machine motion, they were all tied together in a hidden harmony he was trying to reveal. The workshop, despite its clutter, felt peaceful. The walls muted the world outside, the footsteps of neighbors, the barking of distant dogs, the clatter of carts over cobblestone streets. Instead, Leonardo heard only the quiet hum of his own mind. He loved this silence. It allowed him to listen more closely to the world, to nature, to his own thoughts. His inventions were not loud revelations. They were whispers he followed carefully, patiently, sketch by sketch. Many of these sketches would never be built, not because they were impossible, but because the world around him simply had no use or no understanding for machines that seemed to belong to another age. But Leonardo didn't need validation. He needed discovery. This workshop became the birthplace of countless ideas that now feel astonishingly modern. It sheltered the first concepts of flying machines, armored vehicles, mechanical knights, underwater exploration, automated devices, and city planning rooted in hygiene and efficiency. It was also the cradle of ideas that were less dramatic but equally groundbreaking. Improved gears, more accurate clocks, new surveying tools, studies of fluid motion, and detailed anatomical drawings that pushed science forward without anyone realizing it. Every corner of the room held the seed of something remarkable. And yet, if you had visited Leonardo here, you might not have recognized his genius immediately. He rarely lectured about his ideas. He didn't dramatize his work. He approached inventions the way a naturalist approaches a forest, quietly, humbly, with curiosity as the guide. He didn't declare himself a visionary. He simply observed, sketched, recalculated, adjusted, and tried again. His workshop wasn't a laboratory in the modern sense, but it was the closest thing the Renaissance had to one, a place where imagination and observation met in the same breath. Everything began here in this gently cluttered room where silence wrapped around him like a companion. The Renaissance outside moved at a steady, conventional pace, but inside this workshop, time stretched forward, spiraling centuries ahead. Leonardo wasn't inventing the future intentionally. He was simply following the trail of questions wherever they led, and those questions often pointed far beyond the capabilities of his century. This is where our journey begins, not with a grand invention or a triumphant unveiling, but with a man quietly scribbling sketches in a dim workshop, surrounded by the soft glow of lamplight and the scattered pieces of ideas that would one day astonish the world. The workshop was small, but the mind working within it was vast, wide enough to hold dreams that would take humanity hundreds of years to catch up to. Leonardo da Vinci's fascination with flight didn't begin with sketches or mechanical diagrams. It began with watching birds, something he did with a quiet patience that bewildered people around him. Most Florentines noticed birds only when they swooped too close to a market stall or left droppings on a church roof. But Leonardo saw them differently. To him, each flutter of wings, each glide, each spiraling ascent was a kind of natural geometry, elegant proof that the sky was not an impossible realm at all, but simply one whose rules had not yet been mapped. He would stand on a hillside, or lean over a balcony, or sit along the Arno's banks for hours, studying the patterns of starlings and falcons, cranes and swallows. Where others saw chance and instinct, Leonardo saw engineering. If a bird's wing tilted just so, the air beneath it lifted the creature effortlessly. If the feathers adjusted by the smallest degree, the bird banked or rose or slowed with remarkable grace. Leonardo watched this with the eyes of someone who believed nothing in nature was accidental. And slowly, as the days and seasons passed, those quiet observations began weaving themselves into a vision that no one else of his time dared to imagine. Humans might fly too. In the 1400s, the idea of human flight existed only in myth stories of Icarus and Daedalus. Tales whispered in wonder, but never examined with the seriousness of science. Flight, to most people, was God's privilege, not humanity's. It was a border that separated the earthly from the divine, a boundary no one imagined crossing in a meaningful or mechanical way. But Leonardo was not constrained by such mental fences. To him, the world was full of puzzles waiting for patient eyes. If birds flew by principles, then those principles could be understood, measured, tested, and perhaps replicated. So while Florentines went about their practical daily routines, Leonardo began doing something deeply impractical for his century. He began writing down the mathematics of wings. He studied everything he could about feathers. He examined how birds folded their wings when landing, how they used their tails as rudders, how they flapped hard only at takeoff and then glided with minimal effort. He wrote long, careful notes, how the wind lifted feathers from below, how the shape of a wing influenced its airflow. In his notebooks, he used words like pressure, resistance, and force long before those terms had any formal scientific meaning. His understanding wasn't complete. Of course, he lived centuries before modern aerodynamics, but he came remarkably close through observation alone. Watching a bird land on a thin branch, balancing gently despite its speed, filled Leonardo with a kind of awe that made the world feel both vast and understandable. He wrote, "A bird is an instrument, working according to mathematical law." This wasn't poetry. It was a statement of engineering. To Leonardo, a bird wasn't merely beautiful, it was a machine perfected by nature. And if nature could design such a machine, why couldn't he? The more he studied wings, the more determined he became to turn theory into invention. Back in his workshop, surrounded by scraps of wood and parchment, Leonardo began sketching ideas that would later become known as the flying machine, or more precisely the ornithoptera, device meant to lift a human by imitating the flapping motion of a bird. His pages filled with elegantly curved wings, levers, pulleys, gear systems, and instructions written in reverse. He imagined a pilot lying flat on a wooden board, gripping handles, pushing pedals, and using their arms and legs in unison to drive the wings up and down. He believed that if the wings were large enough and the motions coordinated, the device might take off from a height, perhaps from a hilltop or a specially built platform. But Leonardo didn't rush. He rarely did. Instead, he spent months refining every detail. He measured wingspans of birds, calculated ratios between body weight and wing area, and experimented with fabrics that could mimic feathers. Some evenings he tested small-scale models. Other days he drafted alternative wing structures, some inspired by bats, others by birds, and some that seemed to come entirely from his imagination. Each version became a step closer to a machine that, in his mind, might one day carry a person into the sky. Leonardo approached flight not with the wild enthusiasm of a dreamer, but with the controlled curiosity of a scientist. He didn't want to leap blindly into the air. He wanted to understand why he was able or unable to do so. His notebooks are sprinkled with phrases like "observe the lightness of a bird, s bones," and "the air supports the wing when the wing pushes the air downward." These ideas seem obvious today, but in the late 1400s, no one else was thinking this way. He wasn't guessing at flight, he was studying it systematically. And yet, for all his precision and brilliance, Leonardo faced one undeniable limitation: the human body. No matter how strong the wings were, no matter how perfect the mechanics, it was still a human who had to power the entire contraption. A bird's muscles were designed for flight. Human muscles were designed for walking, lifting, pushing earthbound tasks. Leonardo realized this slowly, with the disappointment of a man who sees the right answer but knows he lacks the materials to prove it. The ornithopter required more power than a person could realistically generate. Humans simply couldn't flap wings large enough to lift their own weight. People sometimes picture Leonardo as a man wildly chasing impossible fantasies, but his approach to flight was surprisingly grounded. He knew the machine needed to be lightweight but strong, flexible but stable. He grappled with materials. Wood was strong but heavy. Fabric was light but fragile. There were moments, rare but profound, when Leonardo allowed himself to imagine what it would feel like to rise above the world. In one note, he wrote about the great bird that would take off from Mount Cesare near Florence. He described the world below, shrinking, the air shifting, the silence deepening as the machine sailed above the hills. It wasn't a practical observation but a dream, one he rarely expressed openly. The idea of flight wasn't just an engineering challenge for him. It was a longing, a sense that the sky held secrets worth chasing. In these moments, his notebooks reveal a poetic side, gentle and hopeful, as if he believed flight was a bridge between human ingenuity and the freedom of nature. But Leonardo was also painfully honest with himself. As he refined the design, he encountered problems that seemed insurmountable, not because he lacked intelligence, but because he lived in the wrong century. He realized that no human could create enough sustained force to keep such large wings in motion. He understood the strain that the pilot's body would endure. He knew the gears needed more strength, the frame needed more rigidity. In one of his later designs, Leonardo included a note of caution, almost as if he were writing to future inventors. The great weight of the machine will prevent its rising. It was a simple sentence but profoundly telling. He recognized the limits of his world, even if his imagination didn't have any. He didn't build the flying machine. He didn't soar above the hills of Tuscany, but he mapped principles that later helped shape the foundations of modern aviation. He understood lift and drag, the importance of wing curvature, the idea of controlled descent. He saw flight as a scientific process rather than myth or magic. And perhaps most importantly, he wrote everything down. His notebooks served as breadcrumbs for future engineers' clues, left behind in mirror-written lines that would only be understood centuries later. If someone had walked into his workshop during these years, they might have found Leonardo leaning over a massive wing frame, his hands dusty with sawdust, his hair tied back loosely, his expression one of deep concentration. His notebooks sometimes hint at a gentle defiance, the idea that even if the world didn't see value in these inventions, he did, and in the end, that was enough. He didn't pray for inspiration. He studied geometry until inspiration had nowhere else to go but into the margins of his pages. And so this segment takes us gently into Leonardo's world of feathered diagrams, spiraling sketches, and careful calculations that tried against all the limitations of Renaissance technology to answer one stubborn question: how do you give a human the sky? Let your mind drift into that workshop now. Breathe softly. The candles are dim, wax pooling silently at their bases. The shutters are half closed, leaving just enough light to trace the trembling outlines of wings across the walls. Somewhere beyond the workshop, Florence continues its murmur of distant footsteps and market calls. But inside this room, the world is made of nothing but parchment, wood, gears, and the flutter of the imagination. Leonardo began his pursuit of flight with birds, because of course he did. He watched them the way a structural engineer might watch a bridge under stress attentively, without blinking, trying to understand each force at work. He wrote notes in the margins about wind currents, the angle of primary feathers, how a hawk adjusts its tail to brake, how a swift pulls its wings inward to dive. If he had lived in another era, you could imagine him with slow-motion cameras and aerodynamic models. But instead he had the patient habit of observation, and the kind of mind that refuses to accept mystery as a permanent condition. He sketched the bones of birds with the same reverence he gave to the human form. There were no boundaries to Leonardo, no separation between art and engineering. A bird's skeleton was both sculpture and mechanism. A wing was both beauty and instrument. Leonardo's sketches read like prototypes, or at least like a sincere attempt to calculate stress, lift, torque, and weight distribution centuries before modern aerodynamics existed. The first significant concept he explored was the ornithopter, a machine designed to fly by flapping wings like a great mechanical bird. When you imagine this device, try not to picture something steampunk or modern. Instead, picture a long wooden frame, shaped to cradle the human body, almost like a canoe held in the air. At the sides, enormous wings made of thin wooden ribs, stretched with silk or linen. Leonardo calculated that for a human to lift off the ground by flapping alone, the wingspan would need to be enormous, far larger than what human strength could reasonably control. But he wasn't discouraged. He made diagrams showing how a pilot might use their legs as well as their arms, distributing the effort across the largest muscle groups. He wrote notes about pulleys and levers that might amplify the force produced by the pilot's limbs. These weren't doodles, they were engineering drafts. In one sketch, the pilot lies face down on the frame, gripping two handles connected to the wing beams. When the pilot pulls, the wings sweep downward. When the pilot relaxes, springs pull the wings back up. This sounds plausible until you imagine the sheer weight of the materials available in the 1500s. Wood, leather, iron pins, nothing lightweight, nothing remotely comparable to aluminum or carbon fiber. Yet Leonardo kept refining the design, adjusting angles, experimenting with the curvature of the wings, trying to imitate how birds maintain lift during a downstroke and minimize drag during the upstroke. He didn't stop there. He studied how birds generate vortex lift, a phenomenon not fully understood, even in modern flight science, until the 20th century. He noticed how birds adjust their feathers to shape the airflow. He wrote that air is a body that can be compressed, a concept astonishingly close to the idea of air behaving as a fluidder, foundational principle in modern aerodynamics. This was not a man casually doodling wings. This was someone 20 generations ahead of his time staring at a hawk and reverse engineering nature. But as Leonardo's understanding deepened, he came to a difficult truth. An ornithopter powered only by human muscles could never fly, not with the materials he had, not with the strength a human could produce. And instead of surrendering to this limitation, he did what only truly inventive minds do. He pivoted. If humans could not flap their way into the sky, then perhaps they could glide. And so he created what might be considered the ancestor of the modern glider. The design was elegant, almost serene compared to the frantic ambition of the ornithopter. Wide, stable wings, a wooden chassis balanced for weight distribution, a rudder-like tail for stability. The pilot, once again lying prone, was meant to launch from a high point, perhaps a hill, or a tall scaffolding, and ride the air downward in a controlled descent. Leonardo understood that gliding required not brute strength, but balance and angle. He wrote about the center of gravity and how a shift in the pilot's weight would alter direction, a principle so accurate that modern glider pilots still rely on similar body movements when flying ultralight craft. Some historians believe this glider could have worked if built. Whether Leonardo ever tested it is unclear. If he did, the attempt was likely quiet, undocumented, perhaps even abandoned after a rough landing. But the idea remained, quietly waiting for centuries, until the Wright brothers, again two men obsessed with birdsrid, discovered the basic truths Leonardo had already understood. And then there is the design, widely known today as the aerial screw, often called Leonardo's helicopter. This is the invention that has captured the imagination of artists, filmmakers, and curious minds for generations. A spiral canvas stretched over a wooden frame, shaped like a great corkscrew, intended to twist through the air and lift vertically if rotated fast enough. The pilot and assistants were meant to run in circles beneath it, pushing bars to spin the device. It was beautiful, strange, and utterly visionary. It would not have flown it because of the concept itself, but because the Renaissance lacked the materials and the power-to-weight ratio required. But the principle behind it, the idea that a rotating helical surface could generate lift, is the same concept used in modern helicopters. Leonardo wrote that the machine would screw itself into the sky, a metaphor drawn from carpentry and mechanics, the disciplines he knew best. His mistake was assuming air was dense enough to act like a solid medium for such a device. But the mistake was the kind that leads forward, not the kind that leads nowhere. Leonardo became increasingly aware that the key to flight was not imitation of birds, but mastering the physics of air. And so his later notes shift again, this time into experiments with air resistance, pressure, and turbulence. He observed how wind interacts with surfaces at different angles. He compared the flow of air to the flow of water, sketching eddies and whirlpools, and realizing the similarities between fluid dynamics on land and in the sky. These observations, written in mirror script and left unshared for centuries, foreshadow entire scientific disciplines that had yet to be named. Occasionally, Leonardo allowed himself to imagine the emotional experience of flight. He wrote that when a bird dives, it does so with delight. He wrote that the mastery of air is the mastery of freedom. These moments are rare but revealing. For all his technical obsession, he remained sensitive to the wonder of the thing he pursued. Flight wasn't only a puzzle to solve, it was a glimpse of something higher, cleaner, almost spiritual in its purity. As you picture Leonardo late at night in his workshop, you can imagine him pausing between sketches, rubbing ink-stained fingers together, staring at a feather or a wing bone resting on his table. The candlelight catches the fine carvings of his instruments. Papers rustle softly as he flips through pages crowded with numbers and diagrams. Outside, the sounds of Florence slip into silence as the city drifts toward sleep. But Leonardo stays awake, studying how a swallow tilts its wing in the wind, replaying the motion in his mind frame by frame until it becomes geometry he can trap on paper. There's a calmness in this scene, a quiet rhythm. Leonardo sketching, Leonardo thinking, Leonardo dreaming of a world where humans aren't confined to the ground. And though he never succeeded in making his machines fly, his notebooks planted the seeds for everything from parachutes to helicopters to gliders that would eventually carry humanity into the clouds. When you consider that he did all of this without engines, without aluminum, without centuries of accumulated scientific knowledge, the ambition becomes almost overwhelming. But Leonardo approached it with a kind of gentle persistence, the same way he approached painting, anatomy, and architecture. A mind that refused to be satisfied by the ordinary, simply followed its own gravity toward the extraordinary. And so this segment ends with Leonardo looking upward, hawking upward award, a sky that would not welcome him in his lifetime, but would eventually open for others, thanks to the paths he charted on paper. There is a certain heaviness in the part of Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks where the armored tank appears. Not heaviness in the lines of the drawing, they are as elegant and deliberate as everything he ever sketched, but heaviness in the idea itself. Because when you look at that circular machine, bristling with cannons and gears, you feel that Leonardo was wrestling with something deeper than engineering. You feel the quiet tension of a man who understood war better than he wished to. A man who built weapons not out of cruelty, but because the world around him demanded it. Because his patrons demanded it. Because the Renaissance, despite all its beauty, was soaked with rivalry, violence, and the intimidation of neighbors. And yet, even knowing this, the tank feels strange in his world. It sits among diagrams of wings, musical instruments, hydraulic systems, and studies of the human hand. It looks like something that shouldn't belong with the rest, a strange intruder in a garden of ideas. But Leonardo didn't see contradictions the way we do today. His mind was a vast, interconnected landscape where art, science, invention and, yes, even war wove themselves together into one continuous pursuit of understanding. So tonight, as we wander through this next corner of his workshop, let the candlelight fall over the sketch that most resembles modern warfare, the armored vehicle, a rolling siege engine designed centuries before tanks would ever appear on a battlefield. It begins with a simple question Leonardo wrote in the margin: how might men move safely while under fire? The question itself is ancient. Soldiers throughout history built shields, chariots, siege towers, anything to protect themselves from arrows, stones, and the unpredictable terror of open battle. But Leonardo wasn't interested in patching old answers. He wanted something entirely new, something self-contained, something formidable, something that could push through a battlefield like a great wooden beast. And so he drafted a machine shaped like a flattened cone, or perhaps a circular shell. Some compare it to a spinning turtle, others to an upside-down bowl. But the essence is always the same. A thick, angled armor housing with cannons pointing outward in all directions, mounted on wheels and powered by human force. From the outside, the machine looks oddly serene, smooth, symmetrical, almost geometric. You could imagine it as a strange sculpture if you didn't notice the cannon barrels jutting between wooden slats. Inside the machine, the story becomes more mechanical. Leonardo imagined a team of men turning cranks, each connected to a set of gears that would move the wheels. In his earliest sketch, the gears counter-rotated in such a way that the machine would not actually move, almost as if he intentionally sabotaged his own design. Whether this was a moral hesitation, a bit of intellectual defiance toward war-loving patrons, or simply an early error that he later corrected, we may never know. But the concept remained sound, a mobile fortress capable of advancing across the battlefield while offering full protection to those inside. Picture it for a moment: slow, lumbering, creaking forward, its wheels digging into the dirt of a Renaissance plane, smoke drifting from its cannons, the enemy stunned, perhaps even terrified, by the sight of a rolling metal dome spitting fire. It's easy to see why his patron Ludovico Sforza of Milan found the idea appealing. War in the late 15th century was changing. Gunpowder was rewriting every rule. Armies needed new tools, new advantages, new ways to break the stalemates of siege warfare. But Leonardo's tank wasn't only a product of conflict. It was also the product of geometry. The angled sides weren't a flourish, they were deliberate. By slanting the armor, Leonardo hoped to deflect incoming projectiles, just as modern tanks do centuries later. The circular shape, too, served a purpose. It offered no weak points, no corners vulnerable to concentrated attack. The cannons arranged in a ring allowed continuous fire in any direction. Everything about the design suggests an understanding of battlefield dynamics far ahead of his time. Of course, there were limits. Human-powered cranks would never produce enough energy to propel such a heavy structure. The materials of the erythic wood, iron plates, heavy wheels would make the vehicle sluggish, perhaps even immobile on uneven terrain. The cannons inside risked filling the compartment with smoke, choking the operators. The lack of ventilation alone might have rendered it useless. And yet, none of that diminishes the brilliance of the idea. Leonardo saw the future shape of mechanized warfare long before anyone else even imagined the concept. If you wander deeper into his notes, you see variations of the design, some larger, some smaller, some with different arrangements of gears. One diagram shows the vehicle with 8 large wheels, another with 4. In some versions, the cannons are small. In others, they are enormous. Sometimes he includes eye-level openings for the operators. Sometimes he doesn't. You can almost sense him circling the idea from every angle, refining it, questioning it, trying to understand how such a thing might actually work in motion. And yet, for all the mechanical detail, Leonardo often wrote about this machine with a kind of emotional distance, as if he didn't fully want to be known as a designer of war. He preferred to think of himself as a painter, a sculptor, a student of anatomy, a lover of nature. He wrote of war as a beastly madness in other notes. He disliked the cruelty of it, but he also recognized that invention, like knowledge, has no allegiance. It can be used for beauty or destruction, depending on who holds it. The armored tank existed at the crossroads of those conflicting pressures, genius pulling him forward, ethics pulling him back, patrons pushing him toward military usefulness, imagination pushing him toward exploration. When Leonardo presented the concept to the Duke of Milan, it wasn't part of a single project. It was one item in a larger list, almost like a portfolio: bridges, canals, siege engines, sculptural commissions, and then almost casually the armored car. Some historians believe Leonardo included the tank design to demonstrate his versatility, to prove he could serve the Duke not only as an artist but as a military engineer. Renaissance courts valued versatility. A man who could build defensive walls today and paint a portrait tomorrow was worth keeping close. But whether the Duke truly understood the potential of the machine is difficult to say. No record suggests it was ever built, and perhaps that is for the best, because the tank, for all its genius, belonged to a future that did not yet exist. It required lighter materials, stronger engines, and a battlefield shaped by different tactics. Leonardo had created the blueprint for a world 200 or 300 years ahead of him. Still, imagining the machine in action is compelling. Imagine the Renaissance battlefield, dust rising, arrows arcing through the air, muskets firing in irregular rhythms, horsemen charging, and then imagine the silence that would fall as a great armored dome rolls forward. Cannons blasting from its sides, its form defying every expectation of the age. Soldiers would not know whether to flee or bow to whatever monstrous contrivance approached them. In truth, Leonardo's tank was less effective than a simple bombarded cart or a fortified wagon, but it felt like something magical, something ominous, something ripped out of another century. And this quality, the whisper of the future, is what has kept the design alive in the imagination for so long. Just as his flying machines foreshadowed aeronautics, the armored tank foreshadowed mechanized warfare. And yet, Leonardo's machine remained gentle in its own way, closer to a sculptor's vision of war than to the brutal efficiency of later centuries. It was at once terrifying and strangely poetic, a paradox, a contradiction, a symbol of the Renaissance's complicated relationship with innovation. As the candle flickers in Leonardo's imagined workshop, you can picture him calmly turning his sketches over, adjusting the teeth of a gear in ink, or shading the contour of the armored dome with gentle strokes. In the quiet of night, the world outside fades, and inside the workshop, the rolling beast takes shape only in his mind. Never built, never tested, yet solid in its concept, like a prediction whispered centuries too early. And perhaps that is what makes this invention so haunting. It is not merely an engineering experiment. It is a reminder of how far the human mind can leap beyond the limits of its time. Leonardo lived in an age of stone fortresses, wooden carts, and hand-forged swords. And yet he imagined a machine that resembles the very tanks that rumbled across Europe centuries later. It makes you wonder what else he saw in his mind that he never put on paper. What other shapes of the future passed through his thoughts in the late hours while Florence slept? So we leave this segment with the armored tank resting quietly in his notebook, an unrealized dream, a mechanical prophecy, a strange testament to a mind that kept wandering forward even when the world remained behind. Ahead of us lie more inventions, underwater suits, diving bells, machines for breathing beneath the sea, and even stranger devices hiding in the margins. There is a special kind of wonder tucked into the pages of Leonardo da Vinci's mechanical studies, something different from his flying machines or his tanks or his architectural visions. Those inventions reach outward toward the world, trying to change cities, battlefields, or the sky itself. But the mechanical knight, the creation we explore in this segment, reaches inward instead. It tries to imitate us, to mirror the human form through gears, pulleys, and cables. In this quiet corner of Leonardo's imagination, he tried not to reshape the world, but to rebuild humanity itself, one mechanical movement at a time. And so we begin this segment with a strange idea for the Renaissance: a robot. Not a robot in the modern sense, of course. No circuits, no metal actuators, no internal computers, but a figure built from wood, leather, and simple mechanical principles that could stand, sit, raise its arms, move its jaw, and possibly even take steps. A machine wearing armor, a figure meant to both dazzle and unsettle. a spectacle for courtly entertainment, and a demonstration of Leonardo's unparalleled mastery of anatomy and mechanics. Imagine now the quiet of his workshop. A candle burns low. A suit of armor stands propped in the corner. But this is no ordinary armor. It is layered over a wooden frame shaped like the ribcage of a human. Leather straps stand in for tendons. Pulley cords imitate muscles. Small gears hide beneath the plating. Leonardo stands beside it, adjusting a mechanism with ink-stained fingers, leaning closer with the same focus he once gave to studying the human body in the cadaver rooms of Florence. There is a serene patience in his motion, as though he is not building a machine but coaxing something to life. This mechanical knight, sometimes called Leonardo's robot, was designed around the year 1495 when Leonardo worked for Ludovico Sforza, the ruler of Milan. The Duke held elaborate festivals, theatrical performances, and banquets that blended spectacle with political theater. Nobles competed not only in wealth, but in creativity. Who could host the most astonishing entertainment? Who could reveal the most magnificent mechanical wonder? Leonardo, already known for creating stage machinery that could raise gods from the floor or roll artificial thunder across the ceiling, now explored something even bolder. An automaton shaped like a knight wearing Milanese armor, capable of moving with the eerie autonomy of a human performer. For years, historians doubted this machine ever existed beyond sketches, but in the late 20th century, researchers using Leonardo's notes managed to reconstruct a functioning version, and what it revealed was astonishing. Leonardo understood the biomechanics of human movement so well that he could recreate them mechanically centuries before robotics became a field of study. His knight used a system of pulleys and cables that mimicked the tension and release of muscles. When the operator turned a concealed crank, the chest expanded like a lung. The arms lifted. The visor opened and closed. The torso rotated on its axis. All of it happened with a smoothness that feels almost alive when viewed in motion. And so, to truly appreciate this invention, we need to drift gently backward into Leonardo's earlier years, into the anatomy rooms, where he learned how the body works. He had dissected dozens of human corpses with a rare combination of reverence and clinical curiosity. He drew muscles not as masses of flesh, but as mechanisms, bundles of strings that pulled bone levers. He traced veins and nerves as if mapping rivers and roads. To Leonardo, the body was the greatest machine ever built by nature, and he longed to understand every gear hidden beneath the skin. That anatomical knowledge poured into the mechanical knight. Leonardo didn't guess at how movement worked. He understood it in detail, unmatched for centuries. He knew the knee was a hinge. He knew the shoulder relied on a complex interplay of rotation and lift. He knew the spine was not rigid, but a flexible support balanced by tension. Most Renaissance artists studied anatomy only to draw it accurately. Leonardo studied it to replicate it, to merge art and engineering into something entirely new. Now imagine the evening of the machine's reported debut. A great banquet hall in Milan, high vaulted ceilings, torches flickering against gold tapestries, the court gathering in elegant clothing as musicians play softly in the corner. Leonardo, half in the shadows as always, watches quietly as servants wheel forward a knight in polished armor. At first, the nobles likely expected a performer to step out of the armor or for the suit to be part of a pageant tableau. Instead, the knight lifts its arm on its own. A murmur ripples through the hall, then it lowers the arm again. The nobles lean closer. Suddenly the knight shifts its torso, an unsettling, unnatural, yet mesmerizing motion followed by the opening of its helmet visor, revealing darkness within. In a time before automation, before science fiction, before mechanical men had any place in imagination, this display must have stunned them. It would have felt like encountering magic, like seeing a statue breathe. It would have felt uncanny and awe-inspiring at once. Leonardo did not build this knight to frighten, but to demonstrate what the fusion of anatomy and machinery could create. A gentle spectacle, an echo of life crafted from wood and gears, a mechanical curiosity meant to make people wonder. And yet, beneath the pageantry, this invention hinted at something far more advanced. Leonardo's mechanical knight contained a basic programmable element. The pulley system allowed different strings to be pulled in different sequences, meaning the operator could choose what the knight did next. This wasn't conscious programming in the modern sense, but it was the earliest known example of a humanoid machine with adjustable mechanical behavior. You could make it stand, you could make it gesture, You could make it lift its visor or move its head. Each motion required only the proper sequence of pulls. For a moment in Renaissance Milan, Leonardo da Vinci had created a being of pure mechanism that nearly crossed the threshold into autonomy. And from this, the imagination drifts naturally into a quieter question. What did Leonardo feel as he crafted this machine? Did he smile when the arm moved for the first time? Did he feel a tremor of unease? Or was he simply exploring the boundaries of what could be made, without worrying about the implications? We can only guess. Leonardo rarely explained what he felt. His notebooks speak through sketches and observations, not confessions. But there is a softness in the way he approached the human form. Even when turning it into a machine, he treated it with care, precision, and quiet respect. He wasn't building a soldier. He wasn't building a weapon. He was building a proof of concept and exploration of whether the body's structure could be translated into engineering. Today, when researchers reconstruct Leonardo's night, the most striking aspect is how clean the internal mechanisms feel. No unnecessary parts, no wasted motion. Leonardo understood simplicity as a foundation for reliability. The knight's chest cavity, for example, contains a set of bellows that expand when the torso rises, simulating breathing. This serves no functional purpose other than realism. Yet Leonardo included it because, in his mind, motion without the suggestion of life was incomplete. Even the armor plays a role beyond aesthetics. It hides the machinery, allowing the illusion to remain intact. And all of this from a man who lived centuries before industrial tools, precision machining, or standardized materials. But perhaps the most poetic aspect of the mechanical knight is how it symbolizes Leonardo's worldview. He believed the universe was interconnected, that nature, art, mathematics, physics, and the human body were reflections of one grand design. To recreate a human mechanically was not arrogance to him, it was simply the next step in understanding the principles of life. As we imagine him working late into the night, adjusting gears, tightening cords, and sketching new mechanisms by the dim glow of lamp oil, the mechanical knight becomes less like a curiosity and more like a glimpse into how his mind worked. Always analyzing, always building, always searching for the hidden rules beneath the surface of things. And in this long moment, we can picture Leonardo pausing after completing the internal assembly of the knight. He steps back, he studies the posture, he tests the arm once more. The wooden frame creaks softly. The armor catches a glint of candlelight. The workshop falls silent except for the faint tick of cooling metal. It is a quiet triumph, a private success, a gentle marvel that he will share with the world only when the moment feels right. And yet, the mechanical knight did not lead to a lineage of machines. The idea seems to have faded from his later notebooks, replaced by other obsessions: water pumps, flying devices, weapons, musical instruments, hydraulic systems. The Renaissance world simply wasn't ready for robotics. The materials were too heavy, the tools too imprecise, the need too limited. Leonardo could imagine such beings, but he could not mass-produce them, nor could society understand what such creations might one day become. And so the mechanical knight remained a single sparker, marvel shown at a banquet, then tucked away, its sketches scattered among thousands of loose sheets. It would take nearly 500 years for anyone to rebuild it. Half a millennium before the world caught up to the moment, Leonardo quietly created a robot. But even though it faded from practical use, the idea lived on in subtle ways. Leonardo's study of mechanical motion influenced later designs for automated theater sets, clockwork figures, and industrial mechanisms. The knight became a bridge between anatomy and engineering, between the living and the artificial, between Renaissance curiosity and the distant future of machinery. It stands even today as a reminder that Leonardo da Vinci was not simply ahead of his time. He was operating in a timeless space, drawing ideas from a place centuries in the future, shaping them with ink and parchment, long before the world could understand. As we drift to the end of this segment, imagine Leonardo's mechanical knight standing quietly in the corner of the workshop. The candle is almost burned out. Shadows gather in the contours of the armor. The workshop is still. Leonardo's footsteps fade down a hallway, and for a brief moment, the knight remains a silent sentinel built not for war or glory, but for curiosity, for exploration, for wonder. A machine that moves like a human, a sculpture that almost lives. a whisper from a mind that never stopped imagining what might be possible. When you're ready, we'll continue into the next segment, where Leonardo dives beneath the water and designs the earliest suits for underwater exploration, a place where the world grows darker, stranger, and still more ahead of its time. Imagine for a moment that you are standing on the shore of a dark and quiet river somewhere near Florence or Milan. The water ripples softly, reflecting the muted light of dawn. Leonardo da Vinci, in the background, watches this water as if it holds some secret no one else has noticed. For most people, rivers are places to drink from, to bathe, to ferry goods across, or perhaps, occasionally, to avoid drowning. But to Leonardo, water is a world waiting to be explored, full of principles, mysteries, and possibilities that humans have barely begun to understand. And so, in his quiet and deliberate way, he begins to imagine, what if a human could venture beneath the surface, walk along the riverbed, see the fish and the currents firsthand, explore the depths without drowning? This was not a fantasy to Leonardo. Like much of his work, it was practical, grounded in observation, in the study of nature, and in the application of science to invention. He studied the way fish propelled themselves through water, noticing the resistance of scales, the curvature of fins, the efficiency of streamlined bodies. He observed how divers among the Venetian navy sometimes risked their lives with simple reeds for air, holding their breath just long enough to sabotage enemy ships or inspect underwater fortifications. Leonardo's mind, always restless, realized that if a person could survive longer underwater with the right equipment, an entirely new set of possibilities would open, not only for war, but for exploration, engineering, and understanding the natural world. And so he began sketching what is now recognized as one of the first concepts for a diving suit. In its earliest form, it was a simple idea, elegant and strange at the same time. The diver would wear a full-body suit made from leather, covering the head, torso, arms, and legs. Leonardo noted carefully that the suit must be flexible enough to allow movement while remaining watertight. He drew leather gloves and boots, noting that even a slight leak could be fatal. But the real innovation was not the suit itself. Itself was the breathing apparatus. Leonardo designed a system of tubes and air reservoirs that would allow a diver to breathe while submerged. The tubes would extend from the suit to a floating air supply at the surface, or in some variations, connect to a small bell-like device partially above water. In his sketches, he carefully indicated valves to control airflow, preventing the water from entering and providing the diver with enough oxygen to explore safely. The design is extraordinary because it shows Leonardo thinking not just about survival, but about practicality. Many of his contemporaries might have dismissed underwater exploration as impossible, absurd even. But Leonardo thought through every detail. He considered buoyancy. Leather alone would float, but adding weighted boots and belts could keep the diver grounded on the riverbed. He accounted for pressure, while shallow rivers posed little risk. Even minor depth could make movement more challenging. He studied the shape of the human body in water, realizing that arms and legs must move efficiently, mimicking the motions of swimming animals. Each line in his notebooks demonstrates a mind quietly obsessed with creating a real solution, one that could be built with the materials available at the time. The diving suit also reflects Leonardo's understanding of materials. Leather was flexible, relatively waterproof, and strong enough to withstand some abrasion from rocks or river sediment. He considered seals made from wax or pitch to prevent leaks. He noted that cords and pulleys could allow certain adjustments to fit the diver snugly while providing freedom of motion. The attention to detail suggests that Leonardo may have imagined actually testing the suit, carefully measuring its performance, observing how long a person could stay submerged, and adjusting the design accordingly. Some historians believe Leonardo was inspired by the Venetian naval operations of the time, particularly the use of combat divers who attempted to destroy enemy ships during wars in the lagoon. But Leonardo, as usual, went beyond mere military applications. He imagined engineers inspecting bridges, architects studying underwater foundations, or even naturalists observing fish, plants, and river life without disturbing the water's surface. The suit represents his curiosity and his belief that technology should expand human experience, not simply enforce dominance. And yet, the suit was not without challenges. He understood that a human breathing underwater faces several risks: suffocation if the air supply runs out, drowning if the valves fail, hypothermia in cold water, and entanglement from ropes or plants. Leonardo made careful notes about these hazards, sketching ways to minimize risk. He even experimented with the orientation of air tubes, realizing that long tubes could restrict movement or fill with water if currents were too strong. His sketches show an extraordinary awareness of ergonomics, anticipating principles of modern diving equipment centuries before they existed. It's fascinating to consider how he visualized the human experience underwater. Unlike many inventors who focus purely on mechanical feasibility, Leonardo imagined what the diver would feel. The sensation of weightlessness, the pressure of water against the suit, the struggle to walk or move against resistance, the quiet silence of the submerged world. He noted that the eyes might need protection or magnification to see clearly underwater, and that the suit itself should allow flexibility in the shoulders and hips to permit both walking along the riverbed and swimming motions. In this sense, Leonardo's design is profoundly human. It accounts not just for mechanics, but for perception, comfort, and the practicalities of living and moving in a new environment. In addition to the leather suit and air supply, Leonardo also sketched underwater breathing tubes resembling modern snorkels, sometimes called reeds in translation. These were long, hollow tubes, anchored to a floating device, allowing a diver to maintain contact with the surface while exploring beneath. The design is deceptively simple, yet it demonstrates Leonardo's awareness of air pressure, water intrusion, and ergonomics. He even considered ways to prevent water from entering the tubes if waves or splashes disturbed the surface. In some sketches, he imagined the diver working for extended periods, perhaps inspecting hulls of ships, collecting samples from the riverbed, or observing underwater life, a blend of engineering, exploration, and natural history all in one. The diving suit and its accessories also reflect Leonardo's signature combination of artistry and engineering. We can imagine, if we let our minds drift into the workshop, Leonardo himself wearing the suit for testing, or perhaps a trusted assistant. Water might lap against the edge of the riverbank. The leather would sag slightly, heavy with moisture. The diver would lift the tubes to breathe, careful not to let a single drop enter. The weight of the boots would press against the riverbed. Every movement would be deliberate, cautious, yet also exhilarating. Leonardo would make notes immediately, adjust the pulleys, tighten the straps, perhaps redesign valves, or reposition the air tubes. It is a slow, meticulous, and patient process typical of Leonardo's approach to invention, blending observation, trial, and refinement. The diving suit also foreshadows countless later inventions. While no record suggests that it was ever built in Leonardo's time, the principles are remarkably similar to modern diving equipment. Weighted boots, air tubes, flexible but watertight clothing, breathing valves all are foundational features of scuba and surface-applied diving systems. Leonardo anticipated centuries of exploration beneath water, centuries before humans truly had the materials and knowledge to dive safely for extended periods. His sketches hint at a kind of Renaissance utopia where humans could explore new environments, expanding their senses and capabilities through careful observation and ingenious design. And as with all of Leonardo's inventions, there is a poetic quality to this exploration beneath the waves. The diver is alone, immersed in an alien world, surrounded by currents, fish, plants, and sediment. The air bubbles rise slowly toward the surface, catching light in a fleeting sparkle. The human figure, protected by leather and ingenuity, becomes an explorer of an environment that was once entirely forbidden. It is a gentle metaphor for Leonardo himself, always reaching beyond the familiar, seeking new perspectives, testing the boundaries of what was possible with patience, intelligence, and imagination. Even today, the diving suit reminds us of Leonardo's approach to invention, not simply solving a problem, but anticipating human curiosity, blending mechanics with human experience, considering comfort, perception, and safety alongside function. It embodies the core of his genius, the ability to imagine a world that does not yet exist and to create the first steps toward realizing it, even if only on paper. As we drift toward the close of this segment, we leave Leonardo by the riverbank, studying his sketches of the diving suit. Perhaps he lifts a leather glove, imagining the resistance of water. Perhaps he traces the tube with his fingers, considering its function. The sun glints off the water, the river murmurs softly, and in that quiet moment, centuries ahead of its time, Leonardo imagines a human walking along the riverbed, breathing with the aid of his invention, observing the underwater world with the same curiosity he brought to everything else. In the next segment, we will explore the devices Leonardo designed to move heavy objects with ease, his cranes, hoists, and mechanical lifts, where his genius combined the study of physics, human strength, and mechanical ingenuity to reshape the world above the ground as meticulously as he did the world beneath it. Imagine standing on a quiet construction site somewhere in Renaissance, Florence or Milan, the morning sun just touching the tops of the unfinished walls, dust rising softly from the ground, the faint scent of woodstone and oil filling the air. Workers move slowly, deliberately, hauling stones, beams, and planks with ropes, pulleys, and sheer human effort. The rhythm is slow, laborious, sometimes perilous, yet filled with the faint hum of potential, a sense that walls, arches, and towers are growing upward with patience and ingenuity. And in the corner, slightly apart from the activity, Leonardo da Vinci sketches quietly on his parchment. His eyes flicker between the pulleys, the beams, the motion of the workers, and the sketches forming on his page. He does not simply observe, he deciphers. He sees not just ropes lifting weights, but forces, levers, torque, tension, and balance. Every movement is a puzzle, every strain on a rope an equation waiting to be solved. This is the world of Leonardo's lifting machines, cranes, hoists, and other devices designed to move enormous objects with elegance, efficiency, and ingenuity. Leonardo approached lifting as both a practical challenge and a demonstration of his understanding of physics. Centuries before most of Europe had formalized mechanics, he studied the forces acting on ropes and pulleys, the way levers could multiply human strength, the distribution of weight, and the impact of friction. To him, lifting a heavy stone was not brute labor, it was a problem of applied mathematics. His notebooks are filled with sketches of hoists with multiple pulleys, gears, and treadwheels, each illustrated with the precision of an artist and the logic of a scientist. One drawing shows a large wooden crane powered by a treadmill, where workers walking in circles inside a wheel would generate enough energy to lift massive stones into place. Another diagram shows a pulley system that reduces the effort required by distributing the load across several ropes and axes. In this design, a series of interlocking pulleys redirects force, allowing a single operator to hoist a stone that would otherwise require 10 men. His calculations, sketched in the margins in mirror script, demonstrate a mind constantly thinking ahead, anticipating failure points, and seeking to make machines as efficient as possible. One notable device is a portable crane, collapsible and designed to be moved easily from one site to another. Unlike the large stationary cranes common in the period, this machine could be assembled on site, used to lift a beam or a stone, and then dismantled to be transported elsewhere. This required an understanding not just of lifting mechanics, but of modular design, weight distribution, and structural integrity. Leonardo's drawings show every connection, every pin, every support strut, demonstrating his awareness of both functionality and human use. Another of his remarkable designs is the self-supporting lifting tower, where gears and counterweights allow a single operator to raise heavy loads incrementally, stabilizing the structure at every stage. Here again, Leonardo's approach is striking because it anticipates principles of modern engineering. He understood that lifting is not simply about raw force. It is about control, precision, and safety. Every pulley, rope, and counterweight is carefully calculated to prevent accidents. Leonardo's lifting devices also demonstrate a profound understanding of ergonomics. He recognized that human operators were limited by strength, endurance, and stamina. Many of his cranes are designed to distribute effort across multiple people, or to allow continuous motion without exhausting the operators. The treadmill cranes, for instance, translate walking motion into lifting power, allowing workers to maintain a steady pace rather than exerting maximum force in short bursts. Beyond construction, Leonardo envisioned lifting machines for other purposes, including moving artillery and heavy objects for military applications. He designed hoists and catapults capable of positioning large stones or cannonballs with precision. He also considered the use of gears and ratchets to hold a load steady, ensuring that once a projectile or stone was in place, it would not slip or fall prematurely. His sketches show not only the machines themselves, but the operators in action, giving insight into the practical deployment of technology alongside human coordination. A particularly fascinating design is the combined hoist and winch, a machine that allows a single operator to lift, rotate, and position an object in 3 dimensions. This is significant because it anticipates modern cranes that must maneuver materials with exact placement, especially in construction sites where space is limited and precision is essential. Leonardo was thinking not just about lifting objects, but about placing them perfectly, an understanding that separates mere invention from engineering foresight. One can imagine a quiet day at a cathedral or palace under construction, where workers are hauling stone for arches, columns, or towers. Leonardo walks among them, sketching the cranes they use, noting the strain in the ropes, the angles of the beams, the placement of fulcrums. He observes how a slight shift in rope angle can magnify effort, how the use of multiple pulleys can reduce the number of people required, how counterweights can transform a dangerous lift into a controlled, almost effortless motion. His mind does not stop at observation. It immediately begins to reimagine the design, to improve it, to make the impossible feasible. Leonardo's cranes were not just mechanical marvels, they were educational tools. In his notes, he often includes diagrams of forces acting on ropes, beams, and supports, essentially teaching the physics of lifting centuries before physics became codified as a discipline. A student studying his notebooks could learn about mechanical advantage, leverage, tension, torque, and stability without ever lifting a stone themselves. Leonardo understood that invention is as much about knowledge transfer as it is about function. Every diagram is meant to communicate principles, not just replicate machines. He avoided unnecessary complexity, preferring designs that could be understood, maintained, and operated with minimal confusion. Yet simplicity does not mean small. Many of his cranes are enormous, capable of lifting massive stones or beams to incredible heights. The combination of size, efficiency, and ingenuity is a testament to his ability to think simultaneously about human ability, materials, and physics. Consider the counterweight lifting machine, where stones are balanced by opposing weights, allowing a single operator to raise a load incrementally. He even sketched safety measures, showing how to stabilize the base, reinforce beams, and prevent tipping. In an era when large construction projects were dangerous and slow, Leonardo's insights would have dramatically improved safety and efficiency if implemented fully. It is easy to drift into the romantic side of this scene, workers slowly walking inside treadmill cranes, gears spinning with a soft mechanical hum, beams rising smoothly into place, Leonardo moving silently among them, sketching and thinking. There is an almost musical quality to the motion, the rhythm of human effort converted into mechanical precision, the harmony of man and machine working together. For Leonardo, lifting was not just labor, it was a demonstration of how ingenuity could extend human capability, how machines could amplify effort without replacing skill or judgment. Even though many of his machines were never built during his lifetime, the concepts remained alive on paper, influencing later engineers and inventors. Yet what remains most remarkable is the clarity of thought, the depth of observation, and the subtle blend of art and engineering that defines each sketch. Leonardo did not simply design machines. He designed systems that incorporated human movement, material properties, and mechanical laws into a cohesive whole. In Leonardo's notebooks, cranes, hoists, and lifting machines sit quietly alongside flying devices, mechanical knights, and diving suits. Every invention is a study of movement, force, and possibility. His cranes lift not only stones but the imagination itself, elevating ideas above the limits of contemporary technology. As this segment comes to a close, picture Leonardo on the quiet construction site at sunset. Shadows stretch across the ground. The treadmill crane spins slowly, lifting a heavy beam into place. The air is filled with the soft creak of wood, the muted snap of rope, the whisper of human effort transformed into mechanical elegance. And in that serene moment, we understand why Leonardo da Vinci was more than an artist or inventor. He was a mind capable of seeing the hidden potential in every force, every motion, every tool, and translating it into something that expanded the possibilities of human achievement. Next, we will explore Leonardo's water lifting inventions, where he used his knowledge of hydraulics. Imagine the gentle murmur of a Renaissance river, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple of a fish or the soft glint of sunlight on moving water. The banks are lined with reeds and wildflowers, and the air carries the faint scent of wet earth, wood, and moss. Leonardo da Vinci walks along the shore, sketchbook in hand, observing the flow. He doesn't just see water as something to be crossed, drunk from, or avoided. He sees it as a force, a tool, a system, and a challenge. He watches the currents, studies the ripples, notes the way obstacles create turbulence, and how smooth channels allow water to glide effortlessly. To Leonardo, water is a language, and every ripple, every whirl, every eddy is a word or phrase to be understood, interpreted, and, where necessary, guided. This is the beginning of his work on hydraulic machines, a collection of inventions that would manipulate rivers, canals, and aqueducts, and even allow humans to lift, redirect, and harness water with unprecedented precision. Leonardo's fascination with hydraulics stemmed from both curiosity and practicality. Renaissance Italy was crisscrossed by rivers, canals, and streams, vital for irrigation, transportation, and trade. Cities like Milan, Florence, and Venice relied on controlled water for survival, commerce, and protection. He wrote extensively about how water flows, how it reacts to obstacles, and how it can be guided or stored. In some of his sketches, he drew entire rivers, noting the gradient, the width, and the interaction with natural features, rocks, bends, banks, and vegetation, calculating the best way to control its energy. One of Leonardo's most fascinating hydraulic inventions is the Archimedean screw, which he refined and adapted for lifting water. The principle itself was not new, but Leonardo's genius lay in his ability to optimize it for different contexts. He sketched variations with differently pitched screws, using precise measurements to maximize efficiency for irrigation, supplying water to towns, or draining marshes. Some sketches show a human or animal walking in a treadmill to rotate the screw, converting animal motion into hydraulic power. Other designs suggest that flowing water itself could turn the screw, using nature to work in harmony with human invention. These devices reflect Leonardo's deep understanding of energy transfer, how to convert motion from one source into another, and how to do so efficiently. He also imagined water-lifting wheels, giant wooden mechanisms powered by rivers or manual labor, capable of moving tremendous volumes of water to canals or aqueducts. These wheels often included gears and cogs to control speed and torque, allowing smooth operation without risking structural failure. Leonardo's diagrams reveal an attention to durability and maintenance. He labeled each beam, gear, and axle with specifications, noting the types of wood, the method of joining, and the potential points of wear. It's a level of detail that suggests he intended these machines to be built, used, and maintained over years, not just sketched as theoretical exercises. But Leonardo's hydraulic genius did not stop at moving water. He also studied its potential for defense and warfare. Canals and floodgates could be used to protect cities. Moats could be filled or drained with precision, and water could even power defensive machinery. He drew locks, sluices, and dams, with intricate mechanisms to control flow, adjusting height, pressure, and timing to achieve the desired effect. In some sketches, he designed mechanical gates operated by treadwheels and pulleys, capable of releasing torrents of water on command. His work here foreshadows modern dam and canal engineering, centuries before it became an organized field. Leonardo also investigated turbulence and hydraulics for practical engineering applications, including the construction of bridges and aqueducts. He observed that water erodes banks and foundations, so he sketched methods to channel and redirect flow to prevent damage. He studied vortices, eddies, and whirlpools, noting how the shape of riverbeds, the slope of banks, and the presence of obstacles influenced the speed and force of water. These observations were meticulous and empirical, often accompanied by calculations, ratios, and measurements. His notebooks revealed that he would sometimes construct small-scale models of rivers or channels to test his ideas, pouring water over sand or clay beds to observe patterns and results. In addition to practical machines, Leonardo explored devices for lifting and controlling water on a smaller, more personal scale. He sketched pumps, from simple piston devices to more complex systems capable of maintaining a continuous flow. One design involves a series of interconnected cylinders and valves, moving water from one level to another, almost like a primitive version of modern plumbing. Another shows a pump powered by human treadwheels, capable of supplying water to elevated tanks for irrigation or fountains. These sketches demonstrate Leonardo's uncanny ability to combine mechanics with an understanding of physics, anticipating principles of hydraulics and fluid dynamics centuries ahead of his time. Leonardo also considered the interaction between water and the environment. He was aware of erosion, sedimentation, and the effect of human construction on natural waterways. His notes reveal careful observations of riverbeds, noting where rocks, soil, and plants affect flow and stability. In some cases, he proposed methods for redirecting rivers to prevent flooding or reclaiming land from marshes. He even imagined canals that could bypass natural obstacles, using locks, gates, and controlled gradients to allow boats and cargo to move safely and efficiently. The combination of human effort and natural forces reflects Leonardo's understanding of efficiency and sustainability. He did not waste energy. Every movement, every mechanism, was intended to be purposeful. In this way, his machines resemble living systems, balanced and interdependent, anticipating ideas of ecology and energy transfer long before they were formally recognized. and standing quietly by the river, sketchbook in hand, Leonardo observes, calculates, he studied how small adjustments in angle, height, and pressure could completely change the flow. He considered how debris, sediment, and seasonal variation would affect operation. Every valve, lever, and wheel was drawn with intention, annotated with calculations and observations. These drawings are not only technical manuals, they are reflections of a mind constantly seeking to understand the interaction between forces, materials, and human agency. As we end this segment, imagine Leonardo standing on the banks of a canal at sunset. The water reflects the warm light, turning golden against the dark ripples. A water wheel turns slowly, lifting water to a garden above the town. A pump hums quietly, powered by a treadmill beneath it, moving water with almost human patience. Leonardo studies the motion, adjusts the angle of a sluice, sketches a new design, and then steps back, watching how river, machine, and human effort converge in harmony. It is quiet, deliberate, and profoundly beautiful, the essence of Leonardo's approach to invention. And as the river flows gently into the distance, we realize that Leonardo's genius was not only about creating machines, but about understanding the hidden currents of the natural world. In his hands, water becomes more than a resource. It is a canvas, a teacher, and a partner. In the next segment, we will explore Leonardo's visionary flying machines, where his studies of air, anatomy, and motion converge into designs that reach toward the sky, promising flight long before humans truly took to the air. Every sketch is accompanied by meticulous notes, calculations, and reflections, revealing a mind that blends artistry, engineering, and scientific curiosity into a coherent vision. Some sketches show harnesses, straps, and foot pedals, all designed to allow precise control over wing motion. and in the careful observation of nature, the patience of meticulous design, and the courage to dream beyond what is possible. Leonardo's flying machines remind us that human ingenuity can always reach for the impossible. The air is still, save for the occasional distant clatter of soldiers preparing weapons or the soft stir of horses in a stable. To most, war is brute force. Armies clash, swords clash, walls crumble, and people endure suffering. Rather, he approaches it as an engineer, a strategist, and an observer of mechanics. One of his most famous designs is the armored tank, sometimes called a fighting vehicle. Unlike modern tanks, Leonardo's creation was human-powered, shaped like a turtle shell, with sloped, reinforced sides to deflect enemy projectiles. The vehicle is powered by cranks turned by operators, converting human effort into forward motion. The brilliance of the armored tank lies in its integrated approach. He annotated every detail, considering weight distribution, structural support, and the synchronization of cannon fire. The sketches reveal a mind that blends imagination with rigorous engineering, always anticipating how theory would translate into practice. This concept anticipates the idea of rapid-fire weaponry, centuries before it would appear in actual battlefield technology. He thought about recoil, barrel spacing, and timing, understanding that coordination and engineering are as important as firepower itself. Some designs are remarkably compact, suggesting that Leonardo considered portability and ease of deployment, not just raw destructive potential. He also studied fortifications and defensive engineering. Leonardo understood that a well-designed fortress could change the course of a siege. His sketches include star-shaped fortresses, angled bastions, and reinforced walls, all designed to withstand cannon fire and resist enemy assault. Leonardo was particularly fascinated by mechanical ingenuity in war. He designed catapults, trebuchets, and siege engines with intricate gear systems and levers, capable of hurling stones, projectiles, or incendiary devices with precision. Some machines incorporate rotating platforms or adjustable arms, allowing operators to fine-tune trajectory and direction. It's a sophisticated understanding of mechanics applied to a grim real-world purpose. Another remarkable invention is the giant crossbow, a massive siege weapon capable of launching enormous bolts at fortifications or enemy formations. The design also considers human operation, showing steps for safely loading and firing while minimizing the risk of injury. In his notes, Leonardo remarks on the efficiency of the system, the physics behind projectile motion, and the importance of precision. Leonardo even explored innovations for naval warfare. He sketched ships reinforced with protective plating, equipped with cannons, and capable of maneuvering in shallow rivers or canals. Leonardo's machines, if realized, move with precision. An armored tank advances slowly, cannons rotate within, ready to fire. Each machine represents not chaos, but controlled engineering, a testament to Leonardo's ability to anticipate challenges and design solutions with both creativity and logic. Leonardo's sketches also reveal a poetic aspect to his war inventions. Despite the violence inherent in these designs, there is elegance in the lines, harmony in the gears, and rhythm in the motion. The same attention to form that makes the Mona Lisa captivating is present in his military designs. Proportions, symmetry. He understood, too, that innovation requires iteration and observation. Many sketches include multiple versions of the same device, each refined and adjusted based on hypothetical scenarios or mechanical principles. Even in the grim context of war, his approach is methodical, experimental, and deeply thoughtful. Some historians argue that Leonardo's war inventions were never realized because they were too ambitious for the materials and technology of the time. Heavy wood, bronze, and iron could not always support his designs, and human-powered mechanisms were limited by strength. Yet the designs themselves are visionary, anticipating concepts that would only become feasible centuries later. In essence, Leonardo was designing the future of military engineering long before it could exist, using imagination, observation, and rigorous analysis to extend the limits of possibility. Consider the human element, the soldiers, engineers, and operators who might have worked these machines. Leonardo designs with their needs in mind, accounting for ergonomics, coordination, and safety. Unlike many military thinkers who focus solely on firepower, Leonardo is concerned with usability, efficiency, and minimizing unnecessary risk. Every crank, lever, and pulley is positioned for optimal human operation, reflecting a profound understanding of the interface between person and machine. It is also important to note Leonardo's moral stance on war. While he designed for conflict, he often expressed distaste for the destruction it caused. His notebooks revealed reflections on the suffering of soldiers, civilians, and cities, and he approached military engineering as a way to reduce risk, control force, and introduce precision. In a sense, his inventions embody a tension between the necessity of defense and the desire to minimize harm, a reminder that innovation can serve both practical and ethical purposes. Imagine the quiet of Leonardo's workshop at dusk. The sketches of tanks, crossbows, catapults, and fortified walls lie on the table. The soft glow of candlelight illuminates his meticulous lines, gears, and annotations. He traces a lever with his finger, adjusts a pulley, considers the angle of a cannon. Outside, the sounds of the city fade into evening stillness. Leonardo does not think of war as glory. He thinks of it as a challenge to be understood, solved, and improved through ingenuity, patience, and precise observation. Even today, Leonardo's war machines inspire awe, not simply for their potential destructive power, but for the intellect, creativity, and foresight behind them. They reflect a mind capable of blending art, mechanics, physics, and human factors into cohesive systems centuries ahead of his time. As this segment comes to a close, picture Leonardo quietly closing his notebook, the mist settling over the plains. His machines, whether ever built or not, exist in the mind, in sketches, and in the imagination of future generations. They are blueprints for innovation, a testament to human creativity, and a reminder that even in the shadow of conflict, ingenuity can shine. In the next segment, we will explore Leonardo's mechanical automata, his early robots, humanoid knights, and self-operating devices, where his fascination with motion, gears, and human anatomy merges into machines that move with uncanny life. The smell of oil, wood, and metal lingers in the air, mixing with the faint smoke of a lamp burning low in the corner. Tools lie neatly on a wooden bench. Small hammers, chisels, and files, along with tiny cogs, gears, and chains. Leonardo da Vinci moves slowly among them, eyes focused, hands steady. On the table lies a collection of sketches, diagrams, and small prototypes. At first glance, they seemed like toys, intricate puzzles, or curiosities, but they are something far more remarkable. Mechanical automata, early robots designed to mimic human or animal movement with astonishing precision. In this quiet workshop, Leonardo is not simply an inventor. He is orchestrating motion, combining observation, mechanics, and imagination to bring machines to life. Leonardo's fascination with mechanical motion is inseparable from his study of the human body. He had spent years dissecting cadavers, carefully recording the structure of muscles, tendons, and joints. He understood how limbs move, how weight is balanced, and how the coordination of small forces produces graceful, controlled motion. When he turned this knowledge toward machines, he was essentially translating biology into mechanics. In one famous example, his mechanical knight, often called the robotic knight, could sit, wave its arms, and even move its head. Leonardo sketched the complex system of gears, pulleys, and cables that would allow these motions, reflecting an intimate understanding of anatomy applied to machines. Consider the design of the humanoid knight. Its structure included an internal skeleton of wood and metal, gears that acted as joints, and levers connected to pulleys to control motion. Leonardo even envisioned the movement of its jaw, allowing the knight to open and close its mouth, as well as the ability to move its arms independently. What makes Leonardo's designs extraordinary is the combination of function and realism. He did not simply want a machine that moved. He wanted a machine that moved like a human, with gestures and rhythm that could convince an observer that it was alive. Leonardo's automata were not limited to humanoids. He sketched mechanical lions, birds, and other animals, each designed to replicate natural movements with surprising accuracy. One mechanical lion was intended to walk forward and even open its chest to reveal lilies, a symbolic gesture intended for a royal audience. The sketches show intricate arrangements of gears and cams, each carefully calculated to produce smooth motion. Leonardo used them to explore principles of balance, synchronization, and energy transfer. He often built small prototypes to test how one gear could drive another, how a spring or weight could provide sustained movement, or how levers could mimic the extension of a limb. Each device was a practical investigation into the laws of motion, predating much of modern mechanical engineering. Some sketches show knights capable of standing up, raising shields, and moving their arms in sequence, without continuous human intervention. This required careful synchronization of gears, cams, and pulleys to ensure that each movement followed the previous one smoothly. He understood that achieving lifelike motion required not just power but timing, and he applied principles of rhythm, repetition, and balance to make the movement appear natural. Another fascinating aspect of his automata is their theatrical and symbolic function. Leonardo often designed machines for court entertainment, diplomatic presentations, or ceremonial purposes. The mechanical lion mentioned earlier, walking and revealing a bouquet of lilies, is an example of this. In these designs, artistry and engineering merge. Gears and levers become instruments not just of motion, but of expression. The machines are programmed to tell a story, to impress, or to convey a message, illustrating Leonardo's ability to integrate utility, aesthetics, and narrative into a single invention. Leonardo's automata also reflect his exploration of natural laws and physics. By translating biological movement into mechanical systems, he studied the distribution of weight, the transfer of force through joints, and the coordination of multiple moving parts. He experimented with gears of different sizes, pulleys of varying diameters, and levers of different lengths, constantly refining his understanding of motion and control. It's remarkable to imagine the workshop alive with these machines. Small mechanical birds flapping their wings, a humanoid knight moving its arms and turning its head, wheels and gears spinning quietly on benches, cogs clicking rhythmically. Leonardo walks among them, sketchbook in hand, observing the subtleties of motion, noting where friction slows a joint, where weight distribution must be adjusted, where a spring or lever could improve fluidity. There is a sense of quiet wonder in this experimentation, a delicate balance between curiosity, creativity, and scientific observation. Leonardo also explored mechanical devices for labor and industry through his automata. These inventions illustrate a mind constantly seeking efficiency and innovation, whether for entertainment, experimentation, or work. Another key element of Leonardo's automata is their modularity and adaptability. He often designed machines in parts that could be combined or reconfigured, allowing a single system to produce multiple movements or functions. This approach demonstrates an advanced understanding of systems thinking, anticipating concepts that modern engineers recognize as modular design. Every gear, lever, and axle has a purpose, and every part can be adjusted or replaced to refine performance. Leonardo's notes also reveal an early understanding of programming motion, in the sense that the sequence of gears and cams determines the timing and coordination of movement. In modern robotics, this is analogous to coding or sequencing tasks. Leonardo achieved it mechanically through careful design. The automation of repetitive movements, the precise sequencing of actions, and the control of energy flow are all principles embedded in his automata, demonstrating the depth of his mechanical foresight. Imagine the viewer encountering one of Leonardo's automata in a courtly setting. The machine moves with such precision and grace that it appears alive. Arms raise and lower, heads turn, and wings flap, following a rhythm that captivates the eye. Beyond the spectacle, the observer witnesses centuries of innovation, a mind translating biology into mechanics, observation into calculation, and imagination into reality. As the evening falls in Leonardo's workshop, the machines rest, shadows stretching across benches and tables. They remind us that the roots of robotics, automation, and mechanical design extend far deeper than we often imagine, into a Renaissance workshop where a man studied nature, anatomy, and motion with unparalleled curiosity. Leonardo da Vinci's automata are not just machines, they are stories of possibility, early glimpses of the fusion of mind, machine, and imagination that continues to drive human invention. In the next segment, we will explore Leonardo's engineering for bridges and urban infrastructure, including his designs for movable bridges, elegant structures, and urban planning, reflecting his vision of combining utility, beauty, and innovation in the built environment. Picture a quiet morning in Renaissance Italy. The mist hangs low over a river valley, reflecting the first pale light of dawn, and the air is crisp with the scent of wet stone and earth. Across the gentle flow of the river, townspeople move slowly to their daily tasks, carrying goods, guiding animals, and preparing boats for trade. The river is both a lifeline and a barrier, essential for commerce, but difficult to cross safely. It is here that Leonardo da Vinci steps in, not with grand armies or machines of war, but with a mind attuned to structure, stability, and elegance, seeking to redefine the way people move and connect through architecture and engineering. His fascination with bridges and urban infrastructure is not merely functional. It is a vision that blends artistry, practicality, and ingenuity, a reflection of a mind that sees the world as both a system and a canvas. He studies the flow of rivers, noting the force of currents, the patterns of erosion, and the interaction between water, sediment, and banks. He carefully considers the materials: timber, stone, or a combination, and annotates the ideal dimensions, angles, and joint placement. The result is a bridge that could, in theory, span vast distances with minimal support, reducing obstruction to the river below and providing a stable crossing for people, animals, and carts. Some designs feature counterweights, pulleys, and hinges, allowing rapid deployment and retraction. Leonardo's work on bridges also reflects his understanding of urban planning and the flow of people. He considers sightlines, pedestrian access, and the integration of bridges into the surrounding landscape. A bridge is not just a crossing, it is a statement of design, a harmony of function and form. He evaluates the tensile strength of wood, the compressive strength of stone, and the optimal arrangement of beams, arches, and supports. Imagine a river crossing in a Renaissance city. Merchants push carts across a gently arched wooden bridge, its structure designed to distribute weight evenly and withstand heavy loads. The bridge is both functional and graceful, its lines blending with the surrounding landscape. This is the essence of Leonardo's vision, engineering that solves problems while enhancing the beauty and efficiency of the environment. Leonardo's influence extends to flood control and water management within urban areas. He observes that rivers can both sustain and destroy cities, and he sketches levees, sluices, and diversion channels to mitigate flood risks. His designs are sophisticated, anticipating the need for controlled release of water, sediment management, and the protection of human settlements. In many ways, he is applying the same principles seen in his water-lifting machines, but on a larger civic scale. He integrates engineering knowledge with ecological observation, understanding that urban survival depends on mastering natural forces without destroying them. This combination of practical engineering and artistic sensibility is characteristic of Leonardo's genius. He seeks solutions that are both effective and inspiring, merging science with beauty. He plans bridges wide enough for carts and pedestrians, with gentle slopes for ease of travel. He thinks about safety, stability, and accessibility, anticipating the practical challenges faced by the people who will use these structures every day. Imagine Leonardo standing on a completed bridge, sketchbook in hand, observing the way the morning light glints off the wooden beams and the river below. He makes a note here, adjusts a drawing there, continually refining his understanding of how human, machine, and nature interact. Leonardo's work on bridges and urban infrastructure also reveals a forward-thinking approach to sustainability and durability. He anticipates how materials will age, how water will erode foundations, and how structures can be maintained or reinforced over time. His designs incorporate redundancy, modularity, and adaptability, showing an understanding of longevity and resilience that modern engineers continue to value. Even today, Leonardo's bridge designs inspire engineers and architects. As the sun sets over a Renaissance city, imagine Leonardo walking along one of his bridges, the water below shimmering gold. People cross safely, carts move smoothly, and the entire environment seems orchestrated for harmony and efficiency. The bridge is more than a crossing. It is a testament to human ingenuity, observation, and care. Leonardo's work reminds us that engineering is not only about solving problems, it is about enhancing human experience, integrating natural forces with human creativity, and leaving structures that endure both time and imagination. In the next segment, we will explore Leonardo's ingenious musical and artistic machines, including mechanical instruments, automata for entertainment, and devices that combine sound, motion, and performance, revealing another dimension of his inventive genius. Picture a quiet Italian chamber in the late afternoon, the sun casting long golden beams through tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing lazily in the air. Wooden benches line the walls, scattered with sketches, small gears, springs, and fragments of stringed instruments. Leonardo da Vinci moves among them with a calm, deliberate pace, notebook in hand, eyes reflecting the serene intensity of a mind constantly exploring the intersection of art and mechanics. Here, far from battlefields or rivers, Leonardo pursues a different kind of invention, machines that create music, art, and entertainment, devices that mimic life, evoke emotion, and demonstrate the harmonious connection between motion, sound, and design. Leonardo's interest in musical machines stems from both observation and curiosity. He studies the human voice, the mechanics of stringed instruments, and the resonance of percussion, seeking to understand not only how sound is produced, but how it can be controlled and enhanced mechanically. He sketches early versions of automated instruments, combining cams, levers, and gears to strike keys, pluck strings, or beat drums in precise sequences. In essence, he is creating mechanical orchestras, machines capable of performing compositions with perfect timing, without human intervention, a marvel in the context of Renaissance Italy. One of his most intriguing designs is the mechanical drum player, a device that uses a series of rotating cylinders, similar to a modern music box, to control drumsticks. Each cylinder is studded with pegs arranged in precise patterns, dictating when each drumstick strikes. By turning a crank, the mechanism animates itself, producing rhythmic beats with remarkable consistency. Leonardo meticulously calculates the timing, force, and spacing of the pegs to ensure the rhythm is both accurate and expressive. In his notes, he reflects on the potential for combining multiple devices, creating polyphonic textures and complex musical arrangements. Leonardo also experiments with automated stringed instruments, designing mechanical harps and lutes capable of plucking strings in patterns. These devices rely on a combination of cams, levers, and spring-loaded mechanisms, translating rotational motion into linear action to pluck strings with varying intensity and timing. His sketches include detailed observations of string tension, resonance, and vibration, demonstrating his deep understanding of acoustics. Even centuries before the formal study of physics would codify these principles. But Leonardo's fascination with musical machines is inseparable from his broader exploration of motion. He envisions mechanical birds, humanoid figures, and even theatrical automatons capable of producing sound as part of their performance. For example, he sketches mechanical birds that flap their wings while singing or whistling, combining the principles of levers, bellows, and vibrating reeds to replicate natural sounds. Each movement is carefully choreographed to align with auditory output, reflecting his extraordinary ability to synchronize motion and music in ways that feel alive. Some of Leonardo's designs also anticipate interactive devices for entertainment. He imagines mechanisms that respond to human action, such as pressing a pedal or turning a handle, activating multiple components simultaneously. A single motion could trigger a drum beat, a series of notes, or the flapping of mechanical wings. This interactivity demonstrates his insight into engagement and amusement, revealing that his inventions are not merely mechanical curiosities, but instruments for delight, wonder, and education. Leonardo's notes suggest a philosophical underpinning to these machines. He writes about harmony in nature, the connection between movement and emotion, and the power of rhythm to influence perception. His musical machines are, in a sense, meditations on order and timing, a mechanical reflection of the universe's patterns. By translating human and natural motion into precise, repeatable sequences, he explores the principles that govern both life and art, showing that engineering and aesthetics are deeply intertwined. Another remarkable invention is the mechanical musician, a humanoid automaton capable of playing an organ. Leonardo sketches detailed mechanisms for operating the bellows, keys, and pedals simultaneously, requiring precise coordination of cams and gears. Observers would be captivated, not only by the sound, but by the illusion of life in the machine. It is a fusion of artistry, engineering, and theatricality that remains astonishing even by modern standards. Imagine a small stage, set within a mechanical frame, where humanoid figures act out scenes while synchronized music plays. Gears and cams control the movements of limbs, the opening of mouths, or the waving of hands, all coordinated with rhythmic sound. These inventions demonstrate Leonardo's genius in systems thinking, where multiple components interact seamlessly, producing a spectacle that engages sight, sound, and imagination simultaneously. His musical machines also show careful attention to energy transfer. Leonardo understood that mechanical power must be distributed efficiently to multiple moving parts. He designed systems of gears, pulleys, and levers to maximize force while minimizing friction and wear. This is evident in his drum machines, mechanical harps, and humanoid musicians, where motion is coordinated to ensure smooth operation. Leonardo's mastery of these principles reveals not only technical skill, but an intuitive understanding of physics centuries ahead of his time. Beyond music, Leonardo applies similar principles to visual and kinetic art. He sketches moving sculptures, mechanical fountains, and automata designed to captivate viewers with motion. Some are designed to interact with water, where flow activates gears, causing figures to move gracefully. Others are intended for theatrical settings, combining light, shadow, and movement to create visual poetry. These inventions show that Leonardo's genius is not limited to mechanics alone. He is exploring the aesthetics of motion, using engineering to expand artistic expression. It is fascinating to imagine one of these machines in a Renaissance court. A small automaton sits atop a table, gears turning silently, wings flapping, and a gentle melody emanating from a stringed mechanism. Courtiers watch in amazement, unsure whether what they see is alive or enchanted. Another machine strikes drums, producing a rhythmic accompaniment to a performance, while a mechanical musician plays a melody that seems almost human in its timing and expression. Leonardo's musical and artistic machines also reflect his experimentation with timing and sequencing, concepts that would later underpin modern automation and robotics. Each movement must be synchronized precisely with others to achieve the desired effect. He uses a combination of visual observation and mechanical calculation to ensure that cams, levers, and pulleys interact seamlessly. The result is a system where motion produces rhythm, and rhythm produces emotion, transforming mechanical action into artistic experience. Another striking aspect is Leonardo's attention to realism. Mechanical birds do not just move, they flap wings with believable motion. He studies anatomy, proportion, and motion, translating these observations into gears and levers. This attention to detail is what gives his machines their enduring fascination. They feel alive, not simply functional, bridging the gap between art and engineering. Imagine Leonardo experimenting with a mechanical orchestra. He adjusts the rotation of a cylinder, fine-tunes the tension of a string, and observes the resonance of a drum. A single turn of a crank sets multiple mechanisms into motion, producing synchronized music and movement. He notes subtle improvements, experiments with new sequences, and imagines increasingly complex arrangements. In this quiet, meticulous pursuit, Leonardo is not merely inventing machines. He is exploring the relationship between human perception, mechanical precision, and artistic expression. Even today, Leonardo's musical and artistic machines continue to inspire engineers, artists, and designers. They reveal a mind capable of thinking across disciplines, combining mechanical ingenuity with aesthetic vision. His inventions demonstrate that the principles of movement, timing, and energy distribution can produce not only functional machines, but also objects of beauty and wonder. They remind us that creativity is not limited to one domain. It can flow seamlessly from art to engineering, from sound to motion, and from imagination to reality. As the evening falls and candlelight illuminates his workshop, Leonardo sets aside a sketchbook, the quiet hum of a small automaton filling the room. A mechanical bird flaps its wings, a drum beats in rhythm, and the world outside is still. For a moment, the boundaries between human and machine blur, revealing the extraordinary potential of ingenuity. Leonardo's musical and artistic machines are more than inventions. They are explorations of life, motion, and expression, a testament to a mind that perceives the interconnectedness of all things. Where mechanics can evoke emotion, and engineering can create wonder. In the next segment, we will explore Leonardo's water machines and hydraulic inventions, from pumps to canals to mechanized water-lifting devices, revealing his deep understanding of fluids, force, and the practical needs of cities and industry. Imagine a foggy morning along a slow-moving river in Renaissance Italy. The water glints dimly in the first rays of sunlight, ripples gently brushing against the banks, and the occasional splash echoes as a fish breaks the surface. Leonardo da Vinci stands at the edge of the river, notebook in hand, observing the subtle movements of water, the force of currents, and the way the liquid interacts with stones, soil, and human constructions. For Leonardo, water is not merely a resource. It is a living, dynamic force, full of patterns, power, and potential. He does not see rivers as obstacles or canals as mere channels. He sees them as problems to be understood, mastered, and directed through ingenuity. Leonardo's fascination with water begins with observation and measurement. He studies whirlpools, eddies, and the flow around obstacles, noting how turbulence forms and dissipates, how speed varies with depth, and how sediment interacts with the riverbed. His sketches record the shapes of waves, the spirals of whirlpools, and the motion of water around pilings. Each drawing is more than aesthetic. It is analytical, a record of a mind dissecting the principles of hydraulics long before the formal science existed. By observing water carefully, Leonardo begins to understand the principles of pressure, flow, and force, principles that he will later apply to a wide variety of hydraulic inventions. Among his most famous designs are water-lifting machines, intended to bring water from rivers or wells to higher ground. Leonardo sketches screw pumps, known today as Archimedes screws, which he refines with careful attention to diameter, pitch, and rotation. These screws, turned by hand or by water power, could lift significant quantities of water for irrigation, drinking, or industrial use. He also experiments with chain pumps and pulley-operated lifting systems, calculating the optimal angles, gear ratios, and torque needed to move water efficiently. In each design, Leonardo combines practicality with precision, ensuring that his machines are both feasible and effective. Leonardo's canal systems demonstrate a visionary understanding of urban planning and water management. He envisions canals to divert rivers for irrigation, trade, or flood control, carefully considering slope, flow rate, and lock mechanisms. Some sketches show adjustable sluice gates that regulate water levels, preventing flooding while maintaining navigable channels. Leonardo studies the interaction between man-made canals and natural rivers, noting how bends, sediment, and gradients affect flow. He often annotates his drawings with detailed instructions, reflecting a deep awareness of both engineering and environmental principles. Flood control is another area where Leonardo's genius shines. He recognizes that rivers can be both life-giving and destructive. His sketches include levees, embankments, and diversion channels designed to protect towns from seasonal floods. He studies the stress on earthworks, the erosion caused by fast-moving water, and the potential points of failure, proposing solutions that combine structural integrity with hydraulic insight. His approach is meticulous. Every curve, slope, and reinforcement is calculated to balance water flow with human safety. Leonardo also explores water-powered machinery, anticipating concepts that would drive industry centuries later. He sketches water wheels connected to mills, saws, and grinding devices, each designed to convert the kinetic energy of flowing water into usable mechanical power. Some designs incorporate gear systems to adjust speed and torque, allowing precise control over the machinery. Leonardo experiments with both overshot and undershot wheels, observing how water's force can be optimized depending on the slope, volume, and speed of the river. These machines are not mere curiosities, they are functional systems intended to improve productivity and harness natural energy efficiently. Another fascinating invention is Leonardo's hydraulic ram, a device designed to lift water using the momentum of flowing water itself. His sketches illustrate pipes, valves, and chambers working in concert to exploit pressure surges, a principle that demonstrates his advanced understanding of fluid dynamics. Although such devices were not widely built in his time, the concept reflects Leonardo's ability to think ahead, envisioning solutions to problems that would challenge engineers for centuries. Leonardo's water inventions also extend to navigation and defense. He designs canals and locks capable of accommodating boats, mills, and even military movements. Some sketches include water gates for controlling river traffic, while others suggest mechanisms for raising and lowering boats or diverting water around obstacles. He approaches each problem holistically, integrating hydraulics, mechanical design, and practical use into a cohesive system. One striking aspect of Leonardo's work with water is his attention to energy efficiency. He understands that human and animal labor is limited, and he designs mechanisms to amplify their effort using gears, pulleys, and water flow. Screw pumps, chain lifts, and water wheels all reflect an understanding of force multiplication, motion transfer, and optimization, demonstrating that Leonardo is not only a dreamer but a practical engineer seeking to solve real-world problems. Leonardo also considers urban water supply and sanitation. His sketches include aqueducts, fountains, and reservoirs, designed to bring fresh water into towns and distribute it safely. He notes the importance of maintaining clean water, controlling flow, and preventing stagnation, showing an awareness of public health centuries before it became a formalized concern. He even studies water in wells and cisterns, noting the efficiency of different lifting mechanisms and the optimal depth for construction. Imagine walking through a Renaissance city designed by Leonardo's principles. Canals carry boats loaded with goods, controlled by sluice gates and locks. Water wheels, power mills, pumps lift water to higher streets, and aqueducts supply fountains for drinking and decoration. Bridges span rivers with elegance, integrating his earlier work in urban engineering. Another fascinating dimension of Leonardo's hydraulic work is his scientific curiosity. He records observations of currents, eddies, and vortices with the same precision as he sketches machines. He studies the behavior of water in canals, the effect of friction on flow, and the interaction between moving water and structural elements. These observations inform his designs, ensuring that they are grounded in empirical knowledge and refined through experimentation. Leonardo's notebooks show an integration of mechanics and mathematics in all water-related inventions. He calculates angles, forces, volumes, and flow rates, combining theoretical knowledge with practical application. The sketches often include multiple versions of a single device, each refined based on observed or hypothesized improvements. This iterative process reflects a scientific mindset centuries ahead of its time, emphasizing experimentation, observation, and adaptation. Imagine the quiet of Leonardo's workshop at dusk. The sun sets over the river, casting long shadows across a water wheel gently turning in a nearby stream. He sketches a new sluice gate, adjusting dimensions and angles, while small models of screw pumps and chain lifts rotate slowly under his observation. Each movement, each calculation, is a step toward mastery of a force both beautiful and formidable. Water, in Leonardo's hands, is not chaotic, it is ordered, understood, and harnessed, a reflection of the harmony between nature and human ingenuity. Even today, Leonardo's hydraulic inventions continue to inspire engineers, architects, and designers. His work anticipates modern irrigation, water power, flood control, and urban planning, demonstrating that careful observation, mechanical insight, and creativity can transform both industry and society. His machines remind us that innovation is not only about invention, but about understanding the forces of nature, predicting their behavior, and applying human ingenuity to guide them toward constructive ends. As the river flows quietly in the evening light, picture Leonardo stepping back from his sketches, observing a model screw pump turning smoothly, water rising steadily, and a small canal system flowing efficiently through a miniature city. He does not rush to fame or acclaim. He works with patience, care, and insight, exploring the relationship between force, motion, and human benefit. His hydraulic machines are more than engineering. They are a study of balance, harmony, and the practical application of scientific observation. In the next and final segment, we will explore Leonardo's legacy, how his genius in invention, mechanics, art, and observation continues to influence the modern world, leaving a blueprint for creativity and ingenuity that transcends centuries. Imagine a quiet evening in Florence, centuries after Leonardo da Vinci's passing. The streets are calm, shadows of ancient buildings stretching across cobblestones, the distant hum of a river flowing beneath a stone bridge. Inside a dimly lit study, sketches and notebooks line the shelves, their pages yellowed and fragile, filled with curious diagrams of machines, anatomical studies, bridges, musical devices, and water systems. Though centuries have passed, the work of Leonardo da Vinci still hums with life, a silent testament to a mind that sought to understand, create, and inspire. Leonardo's genius cannot be measured simply by the number of inventions he designed or the variety of sketches he left behind. His true brilliance lies in the breadth of his curiosity and the depth of his observation. He was simultaneously an artist, scientist, engineer, inventor, and philosopher, exploring the natural world and human ingenuity with equal fervor. From mechanical knights to flying machines, from water-lifting devices to musical automatons, Leonardo's inventions reflect a mind that saw no boundaries between disciplines. Everything was connected. Anatomy informed mechanics, observation inspired art, and nature guided engineering. Consider his approach to learning itself. Leonardo meticulously recorded everything he saw, experimented with countless prototypes, and refined his designs with patient observation. Even in art, his understanding of perspective, proportion, and human anatomy transformed painting and sculpture, influencing generations of artists. Leonardo's inventions also reveal a deep understanding of systems and interconnectivity. He did not see machines as isolated devices. He studied the relationships between parts, forces, and motion. His mechanical knights, for example, operate as cohesive systems, where gears, levers, and pulleys interact seamlessly to mimic human motion. His water machines function as part of broader hydraulic networks. Even his musical automatons combine mechanics, timing, and acoustics into unified performances. In every case, Leonardo demonstrates a holistic vision, anticipating principles of engineering, physics, and design centuries before they were formally understood. Perhaps even more remarkable is Leonardo's vision of possibility. Many of his inventions were never built in his lifetime, constrained by materials, technology, or social context. Yet the ideas themselves were revolutionary. Flying machines prefigure airplanes and helicopters. Armored vehicles hint at modern tanks. Mechanized devices foreshadow robots and automated instruments. Leonardo's imagination was unbound by the limitations of his era, a mind exploring what might be. rather than what already was. Leonardo's legacy also lies in inspiring curiosity and wonder. His notebooks are more than records. They are invitations to explore, to question, and to dream, transcending the limits of time, geography, and culture. Imagine a child in a modern classroom, holding a model of Leonardo's mechanical knight or a replica of his flying machine. Even without understanding all the mechanics, the child feels the spark of possibility, that ideas, carefully observed and creatively pursued, can change the world. This is the essence of Leonardo's legacy, a demonstration that curiosity, patience, and ingenuity can bridge centuries, inspiring minds long after the inventor himself has passed. Leonardo's approach to invention was also deeply human. He observed people, animals, and nature not merely to record them, but to learn from them, to replicate their efficiency, grace, and resilience in machines. The humanoid automata, mechanical birds, and water machines all reflect a desire to harmonize human creativity with natural forces. Leonardo teaches us that engineering is not about domination over nature, but about understanding, adaptation, and partnership with the world around us. Even today, modern engineers, architects, and designers continue to study Leonardo's principles. Robotics, automation, biomechanics, hydraulic engineering, and urban planning all trace roots to the observations and sketches of this single mind. His work challenges us to think broadly, to connect disciplines, and to approach problems with both rigor and imagination. He remains a touchstone for creativity, demonstrating that true innovation often arises at the intersection of multiple fields. Driven by curiosity and careful observation, Leonardo's notebooks also teach an important lesson about failure, experimentation, and iteration. Many of his designs were never built, some may have failed if attempted, and many sketches reflect trial-and-error processes. Yet each page documents thinking, adjustment, and insight, showing that the path to genius is not linear but exploratory. By embracing observation, experimentation, and reflection, Leonardo offers a blueprint for innovation that is as relevant today as it was in Renaissance Italy. As we reflect on Leonardo's life, it becomes clear that his genius was not merely about the machines he designed or the paintings he created. It was about a mindset of relentless curiosity, a holistic vision, a commitment to observation, and a courage to imagine possibilities beyond the constraints of the present. His work invites us to look at the world differently, to see patterns, to question assumptions, and to recognize the beauty in both function and form. Imagine the quiet of the evening in Florence once more. A model mechanical bird flaps its wings on a desk, a water-lifting device rests beside a notebook filled with sketches, and the sun sets over a city still shaped, in part, by the ideas of one man. By studying him, we not only gain insight into history, science, and art, but we also learn the enduring value of curiosity, patience, and imagination. As we close this chapter on Leonardo da Vinci's inventions, it is worth pausing and imagining the possibilities still unexplored. His sketches, still fragile on parchment, still hum with life, waiting for minds like ours to continue the journey he began. In Leonardo's world, machines were more than tools. They were expressions of thought, extensions of human curiosity, and glimpses into the infinite potential of invention.